Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Right, so in today's video we are going to be talking about the Battlegrounds Season 11 meta. And just to be clear, so there are no misunderstandings, I am going to be specifically talking about the Victory Track meta and Weeks 1 and 2 Gladius Circuit meta. Because number one, both of them are effectively identical, because the only new node addition kind of further punishes the thing that you don't want to do anyway, so there's no need for two separate videos. The point being is the block damage will hurt in these metas, and that's about it. In Victory Track, it's just going to be a lot of block damage. In Gladius Circuit, it's going to be a lot of block damage, and if you're not careful, your opponent's going to be gaining a bunch of power. But still, both of those things kind of point to the same direction. You want to avoid parry-heavy champions or parry-reliant champions, and, well, yeah, you just want to avoid blocking, so intercepting and so on and so forth is the way to go. So both of those nodes fulfill the same function. The reason why most of this video, or at least parts of it, will not necessarily cover weeks 3 and 4 meta is because of two key differences. Even though we do have the same attacker buff, the defensive buffs are, well, more different than people realize. Number one is the fact that escalating prowess gives an indefinite prowess effect to the opponents, versus the combo deja vu prowess, it gives a timed prowess. And many people will think, like, what's the major difference in the fight? It's quite simple. If there's an indefinite prowess buff on the opponent, it will never expire, yielding your Mystic Dispersion, unless you actively get rid of it. It also means that any champions like Absorbing Man, for instance, or Mojo, or whoever else, will have no way of speeding up the expiry of something that's permanent. Therefore, there will be champions that work in one meta exceptionally well, will not work in the other meta. And the other point is that prowess protection will effectively mean that unless you can nuke down the opponent extremely fast, you have to get rid of the prowesses on opponent, or you will time out or struggle a lot. And that, however, means that it's going to be quite vastly different offensive and defensive options. The reason for it is because in the first meta, there's absolutely nothing slowing you down. You don't have to use the attack tactic, and there's nothing in defensive tactic to stall you or to alter the fight in any meaningful way, aside from threatening you with more block damage when opponent throws special attack due to them having prowess effects, plus these impact charges giving you more block penetration. But there's nothing at all slowing you down. In fact, the only way your damage can get affected in these metas is if you use a tech attacker, you can increase it substantially. So this is going to be an extremely nuky meta where you can pretty much in theory just vomit your top rank champions if you have mid-level count, and you will do just fine, because, you know, a Human Torch will likely still do better than lower rank rando tech champion in many matchups. And it's still going to be all about having an answer to Sasquatch and having an answer to Kindred or Photon or whatever, much more than, you know, gaining inches and playing the nodes. So it is effectively an arena-like meta, at the very least for first 2 weeks in the Gladius Circuit and Victory Track. There are some conclusions that we can draw, however. We're going to start with the fact that Tech class obviously is going to reign supreme, and I will cover many of those champions, but it is important to point out a few things in the wording of these nodes. And one of the most important aspects that a lot of people will overlook here is that your attacker buff, fully operational, functions when you remove prowess effects, or you gain armor, you inflict armor break debuffs, you remove the prowess effects, you remove the prowess effects via champion's innate abilities, and most importantly, when you gain an armor up buff. And that, however, means that a lot of the tech champions, especially the more recent ones, will not do as well, even though in theory they have the abilities to work. For instance, Shuri. Shuri can gain armor up passives like crazy. With their armor up passives, they will not be doing anything too much. Similar to Iron Man Infinity War. Now, he does have an armor break, so he can benefit from the node, but not to the extent that, you know, he otherwise could if armor up passives would count. Similar to Lady Deathstrike. She doesn't have a way to remove the provinces, I believe. She does not have an armor break. She doesn't have an armor up buff gain. She gains passives. So she isn't going to be as potent. On the other hand, somebody like Future Ant-Man is going to be absolutely ham because his nano armor does count as armor ups. Right, so we're going to get to the specific tech champions later. First, we're going to talk about which type of defenders will be doing the majority of the heavy lifting. And there will be defenders that typically do force you to parry and block and stall these fights out anyways. Something like Killmonger, for instance, where you will want to wait out the reverb phases. And Killmonger obviously has his reverb. He's going to give you some chip damage anyways. And any champion that will increase your, well, chip damage, will increase it drastically due to the increase in prowess, in case you end up taking like a level 1 hit in a block or a level 2 hit in a block if he does corner you. And obviously, if you end up parrying him. Now, the downside, the scary thing about Killmonger is because armor break is going to be rampant. So Killmonger is definitely also going to be one of those defenders that you will need to use wisely, because there will be an influx of tech champions with access to armor break as well. But I still predict him to be a problem. Something like Hawklink that gives you a ton of block damage as is will be much, much more punishing because of it, should you happen to parry against him, for instance. Another champion that I wanted to point out, and a group of champions in a sense, is any champions with unavoidable special attacks. And here a perfect example is Punisher 2099. If your Punisher is big enough and you can't deal with that special attack, and by deal with that special attack I mean have some sort of auto evade mechanic or way to phase it, or perhaps new Iron Man, buffed Iron Man, that can effectively just tank anything anyways, you will eat a lot of damage. So overall I think yeah, Punisher 2099 is going to be a bit of a savage on defense with these first 2 weak nodes, because every single special attack will hurt a lot. In many cases, in theory, it could quite possibly be better to eat it if you have gotten rid of the prowess effect, but not impact passives. So it is definitely going to be something that requires quite a specific counter and extremely fast nuke or power control. Because yeah, undexable special attack champions will definitely be painful. Right. So the block damage. Other point that I wanted to, again, reiterate is all your highest ranked nuke champions are still free to go in the deck. That means somebody like Kate Bishop, no problem. Put her in. There's absolutely nothing slowing her down. She still can take virtually any matchup or majority of the matchups, and she's still going to shine greatly. Human Torch. Now, Human Torch is going to be a bit different, but he still will work perfectly fine as a nuke as long as you are able to alternate your combos. And here is the one and only bit of like skill element. I said that, you know, parry reliant champions aren't going to be ideal, and that is true. But in case of somebody as powerful as Human Torch, it is perfectly feasible to just do medium, light, medium, heavy attack, medium, light, medium, heavy attack combos whilst building up your smolders. So you'll be perfectly fine, which is the same thing that I recommend with Archangel. Archangel still can go freely in the deck. There's no good reason why not to. The only thing that you will want to kind of differentiate is throw a heavy attack, throw a medium, light, medium, throw heavy attack. Then afterwards, you can take 3 or 5 seconds longer in that fight, but you can save yourself a ton of block damage. So in effect, you technically can use virtually any champions unimpeded as long as you are able to alternate your combos as well. Now again, just jumping in the obvious ones, the rest of the meta overall, we are going to see dominated by tech champions. I do expect the champions split to look like, you know, 8-9 tech champions, 8-9 mystic champions, and then whatever is left over, like 2-3 champions of other classes in top tier decks, because obviously tech champions do gain the advantage. And if you kind of think about it, you can put 2 prowess effects on your opponent with a single combo, and then should you happen to remove them, that gives you 20% fury for 20 seconds. You can probably maintain 5-6 Furies with majority of these champions in almost any matchup, as long as you have access to armor buffs or armor break debuffs at, you know, decent rate, which effectively will mean that you're using recoil masteries just with no real downside. So again, it is going to be very nuky, and in case of future Ant-Man, for instance, I expect him to be able to just nuke down champs with the single level 2, at least of like equal or similar rank, unless they're like super tanky or something. I do think that people who chose Captain America Sam Wilson are going to be quite happy from them 7-star selectors, because the one thing Captain America Sam Wilson lacks is the damage, right? And the damage, well, it's going to be better. And he has always been a very versatile character. And if you have picked him from the selector, I assume you know how to use him, and I assume you like him, and you're probably very happy because you're going to be gaining plenty of armor ups, which means you're going to be removing plenty of prowess effects, which in return means you're going to be gaining your Furies, and he's going to have very viable offensive power, even unawakened, due to the increase in damage, which means he's going to be a very solid dual threat type of a champion, because he's not that easy to fight. You are always taking a massive risk if you end up taking him to level 2, because that level 2 is really hard to dex and it can rupture you through block, and with those prowess effects and everything else, that is going to be pretty much game over or majority of your health gone. So you will have to force out those level 1s from him, which he doesn't always throw. And again, those armor ups, everything else that mitigate the damage, auto block, yeah, he's probably going to be very annoying. And for this meta, for this week, had I known, I probably would have picked him, honestly, because I do think he's going to be quite a bit of a problem this month overall, because he's also, I believe, going to work the next meta. Right, moving on, the new Iron Man. It seems like this month metas are pretty much made for him, because not only he gains plenty of armor ups and has access to armor breaks, which means he will have 2 ways to consistently remove any prowess his opponents get. He also has that line about mega block damage reduction, and his sig ability further enhances it, which leads me to believe that he's still going to be pretty much as tanky as ever, take very little block damage, and will have his damage increased to significant margins. And yeah, he's probably going to be a bit of a problem as well. Moving on, Hulkbuster. Again, every special attack has access to armor break. He gains armor ups on a timer, I believe every 12 or 15 seconds. 1 second, we can double check that. Start of the fight, and every 15 seconds he gains an armor up, which means every 15 seconds you're going to gain that, which again means you will be able to maintain several Furies at any given time, because the Fury will last 20 seconds. You're going to be gaining armor ups every 15 seconds, plus every time you throw a special attack because of an armor break. So yeah, Hulkbuster is going to be a bit of a monster. Omega Sentinel, again, gains armor up like there is no tomorrow, has one of the highest base attacks in the game, which means that she benefits extremely highly from those passive Furies, which means she's going to be a really, really solid monster. Nimrod, obviously, yeah, as if he needed any more damage, or, you know, prowess effects themselves supercharge him. Warlock, again, is going to be perfectly usable, but here is going to be that one little caveat again. You will want to alternate medium, light, mediums, and heavy attacks with him, because you will not have that high of an ability to inflict armor breaks. You can inflict 4 of them, but that's only on level 2s, which means you will probably have to stack up some prowess effects on an opponent. Now, the best, or the bright side here is, with Warlock, you can quite easily prevent opponents from throwing special attacks, and then gain an increase in damage output just in time for your level 2s, which will work greatly to increase his damage. The problem and the risky part is the block damage, but you can again mitigate it with medium, light, mediums, and heavies, because you do not have to do any other stuff exclusively. And Warlock as a champion often thrives when you do a bit of a slower type of combo, because then you can again completely prevent opponents from throwing special attacks, which I think will help him greatly. Now, War Machine, I think, is going to be one of the hidden heroes of these metas as well, because of his pre-fights and the fact that his level 1 removes prowess effects like there's no tomorrow. And with that, you will obviously increase your rupture damage as well. And yeah, I do think he's going to be quite a solid champ for these metas, and his level 2 has that armor break too. With Vision, again, very solid gain of armor ups, and the beauty of With Vision is the fact that if you play her well, you don't have to take any block damage because of her phasing. So that will definitely, if you like With Vision, if you have ranked With Vision, you will 100% be happy in these metas, because she will have access to more damage, and that will enable her to take the heavier matchups, the matchups perhaps of a champions that are a rank higher, all the meanwhile avoiding the block damage. So With Vision is definitely also going to be a very solid pick for the people who have ranked it. And the other class that will dominate these metas is obviously going to be Mystics. There's going to be the Juggernaut, Nullify the Prowess, get spam your level 2s, awesome. You don't ever really need to block with him due to your Unstoppables. America Chavez, again, is going to work great because one of your zones reduce opponent's prowess potency to begin with, so you're not going to have to be as afraid. Here you can see that, no. Oh, it doesn't reduce prowess, it was Pierce that they changed. I mixed it up. But either way, with America Chavez, she's going to gain extra damage for each of the buff on the opponent, which means she's going to be hitting significantly harder than she normally does. Those prowess buffs will still end up expiring, which will fuel her Mystic Dispersion, and she's a beast as is. Obviously, we have Absorbing Man, he's going to expire those prowess pretty much instantly, and Absorbing Man is also a champion that's perfectly situated to mitigate the block damage due to his massive resistances, as long as you are using the appropriate form for the appropriate damage type. That's quite important to remember, and it will be tricky against some champions that, for instance, have physical basic attacks and energy special attacks. So you do need to remember that whichever form you're in, you can greatly mitigate the block damage, but it's just for that one form. Overall though, I do think he's going to be crazy good, because in any meta where there are extra buffs that he can deal with, or that can fuel him, is going to be great. Now I know that Prowess is not one of the buffs that he lets expire that quickly, but again, as I said, due to the fact that they will expire every 10 seconds anyways, because they last only 10 seconds, and that is going to give him extra power, which is going to mean extra special attacks, which is going to mean faster ramp up, which is going to mean higher damage, and all the meanwhile he has access to regenerate chip damage, whatever he does take, and he's going to be taking a whole lot less chip damage than most champions. I think Longshot is going to be a crazy dual threat, because Longshot by nature is one more of those champions that forces a lot of parries out of opponent due to his power gain, and you having to bait out all the special attacks. All the meanwhile, obviously, he's going to be significantly more powerful than normal offensively, as you're going to be able to nullify the prowess effects whenever they gain them, if you have him at a decent high sig. But even if you don't, his level 2 is going to get rid of them, and is going to turn that into an extra damage source. And again, I do think he's going to be particularly tricky on defense yet again. And that is quite simply due to the fact that he's the type of champion that you quite naturally end up having to parry a lot, because you don't necessarily want to dex against him, because every time you do, if he's awakened, he has a chance to nullify that dex, and then he gains more power, and then you're even in bigger trouble. So just from experience speaking, this is the guy that forces you to parry a lot, which is gonna hurt a lot in this meta. So keep an eye out for that fight, don't be caught out by surprise. Obviously, Tiger is still going to be a nuke. There's going to be extra buffs for her to neutralize. I'm quite sure that you're going to be able to infinitely spam your heavy attack with Dr. Doom as well, with Combat Deja Vu. Because I'm quite sure the AI has that very weird interaction where if you do that heavy attack once with stun, then AI always allows you to get in the second slap for free, and once you do that, the next heavy attack is going to stun again. And even though it technically should not necessarily work, I believe I have always gotten away with infinite Doom slap stuff in these Combat Deja Vu metas. So I am quite sure, I'm definitely going to test out in Victory Track, but I'm quite sure that even if it doesn't work, Doom is still going to be great, obviously, because he has the stagger, he has the nullify, he has the power gains, and all that other good stuff. But even if that infinite doom slot doesn't work, however, for science, I shall risk that one. And the last champion that I wanted to point out yet again, obviously, is the Cosmic Champion. And I wanted to give him a bit of a special mention because Ronan is going to be an absolute beast. But yet again here, the signature ability is going to be quite vital. And if your 6-star Ronan is not high sig or a decent rank, I do think a 5-star Ronan will be perfectly viable, which also makes him a great candidate for Ascension right now. Because I do believe that everybody has had a chance to earn pretty much 3 Ascensions. Let's say 2 of them automatically should go to Quake and Magic. And the third one, I think, for most mid to higher end level players who have not invested in their Ronan yet, quite possibly the best pick for that is Ronan. And there's an additional benefit to that as well, because your rank 3 Ronan, even if he is high sig, will have slightly lower combat power rate. Which means that a maxed out 5-star Ronan will have slightly easier time maintaining the stun loops, even at lower SIGs or lower buff levels or something like that. So that's just something to point out there, because 6-stars obviously still have this gradual combat power where your rank 1 6-stars gain least amount of power and rank 5 6-stars gain more power, and it scales the same as 5-stars. So a rank 5-star ascended will gain more power than a rank 3 6-star, even if they're like same sig levels and everything else. So it will be interesting to see which one kind of works out better. But yeah, if you haven't sig 200 your 6-star Ronan yet, definitely ascend your 5-star. I have a very good feeling he's going to be quite useful. And that's pretty much it as far as my advice goes for this meta. Obviously, we still have to wait and see. Let me know if you guys, or when you guys want to see the video for weeks 3 and 4. I personally like to do my rank ups primarily for week 3 and 4 meta, but I know a lot of people who might struggle or might not be as confident about the victory track or want to get a good early start, also want to get these victory track and week 1 and 2 rank ups done. So I definitely will be making a video about week 3 and 4 meta. It's just I'm kind of wondering when you guys would like it. Do you guys want it this week or just before the next meta starts? So yeah, let me know about that, and let me know if you have any more notes. Obviously, I can't mention all of the champions and all of the thoughts, and there's going to be, as I said, all your regular nukes will work fine, CGR is going to be great, and all that other stuff. It's just I wanted to point out some nuances here. For instance, the difference in between prowess buffs expiring and not expiring, or the viability of your regular nukes compared to the next week meta, and so forth. So I hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, hit that like button, and I will catch you guys later. Bye bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information